Hey, all my Leo friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Teri Hunter, and I'm here today with your April 2024 monthly horoscope. These horoscopes are based on whole sign Western astrology. So when I'm talking about Leo, I'm talking about Leo rising. This is also applicable to Leo sun, Leo moon. And if you have 3 or more personal planets in the sign of Leo, this video is also applicable for you. This video is based on the Pacific time zone. So if you are somewhere else in the world, please adjust for your location. April is a very, very big month. It starts with a Mercury retrograde. Then we're going to see our second eclipse of the season. And we're going to see the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that everybody's been talking about. So it is an action-packed month, and it is definitely setting a tone, a pace, creating a platform for what you'll be manifesting moving forward. I'm going to right now jump to later in the afternoon. It's about 3:15 Pacific time when Mercury goes retrograde in Aries. You can see here that we now have the Leo chart showing up. The chart will change as we go through the days. I can't control and keep it on the rising sign, but here we see that your ninth, well, basically your 8th, 9th, and 10th house are lit up in April. We see Mercury starts on the midheaven, the very top of your chart, and starts its retrograde back into Aries all the way to 15 degrees. This is significant because Mercury rules our everyday thoughts. It rules our everyday activities. It rules our roadways, our escalators, our sidewalks. It rules your bicycle, your car, your mode of transportation. It rules thought. It rules speech. It rules learning. It rules early age children and your childhood experience. It rules workmates, teammates, schoolmates, friends, siblings, cousins. So as we see Mercury retrograde through Aries, which is your 9th house of beliefs, of it's a broad house of expansive thought and education. The 9th house rules foreign people, foreign places, foreign things. It rules in many ways business and commerce, as Jupiter represents business and publishing and marketing and influencing and writing. There's a certain amount of that. So we're going to see Mercury will travel over Eris. This is a very it's an assertive energy. Eris is the little sister to Mars, as I was taught. And I think of her sort of as a Xena warrior princess. She very much stands up for what she believes in and what she thinks is fair and correct, and for her sense of self. Then Mercury is going to go over Chiron, the wound that when it is transformed becomes the gift. And it will finally settle here on the North Node, which is going to make this strong, ravenous, insatiable energy for renovating your mind, for, I want to, in some ways, like pioneering a new belief about the self. So I think this is really powerful as we start this month. We also see that Jupiter and Uranus are just 3 degrees apart. So this is a very strong, you can feel this, even if you don't realize you're feeling it, meaning if the people who don't study astrology. The other thing that I think is interesting at this time is while Mercury is retrograding and giving us an opportunity to reflect on how we assert ourselves and how we want to, carve out our own lives, we see a quincunx between Jupiter and the South Node, which is a blind spot. And then we see a quincunx between the South Node and Saturn. Somewhere there is a belief system about my history, about who and what I am and how I have historically known myself to be. And there is a challenge here because the focus is the South Node. And the South Node, while it's in Libra, will focus on partnerships, but it is very much focused on the partnership you have with yourself, which then determines the health and viability of the other partnerships you have. It also is about diplomacy and about harmony and peace, and a sense of peace within And I can't help but think of it as a creative piece. So here, Leo, this is an opportunity on this very first day of the month. If you feel reflective about your history, if you see your ideologies and your philosophies shifting, and yet you feel you may suffer in your relationships, it's not necessarily the case. There could be the potential that actually supports and encourages your relationships. Also on this day, we see Venus in her exaltation in Pisces, reaching her conversation with Neptune. This is a super dreamy time. And I think in some ways, while we have a half square to Venus retrograde, this could bring up, have I done enough? Have I worked hard enough? Am I connected spiritually? Am I supporting my creative endeavors? Or is there a shadow somewhere? Am I holding back in some way? We also see a growing conjunction between Mars and Saturn. And most astrologers will say that Mars is not powerful in the sign of Pisces, but I believe this is where we see a spiritual warrior, where Mars, after 4 to 5 billion years of circling the universe, has learned a thing or two. And now, as he summits with the planet that hosts his exaltation, Mars is exalted in Capricorn. Saturn rules Capricorn. So this is a conversation of building a deeper spiritual belief and now transforming my history from something that has anchored me in and made me feel defeated or invisible into broadening into a bigger spotlight, because all of this over here in your 10th house is huge. And this is the most public house in your chart. This is where you'll see, where you go from married to single, you go from married to divorce, you go from a junior job to an executive job. This is a house where you build, where we see ambition, where we see how people perceive your public persona. And Leo rules the zodiac. So you are a natural leader, and this is going to give you an opportunity to broaden that. Let's go to April 5th, where Venus will enter Aries. Now, traditionally, Venus is considered in detriment, which means she doesn't feel her best she feels disrespected in many ways. When she's in detriment, she doesn't feel as powerful. And I think that's historically because the feminine energy has not been celebrated when it's been assertive, when it has said, I matter. What can I do for me that contributes to the we? So here we literally see her entering on the world axis. The 0 degrees on the cardinal signs is the world axis. So that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. And she's going to start to really think about her individuality here. She's still in a conversation with Neptune, but here she's willing to start to take action to root what she conceives about herself. And as Mercury retrogrades over these points, we're going to see Venus moving towards Mercury. So there's a real coming together and a review of how I feel about myself, how I perceive myself, how I allow myself to assert myself and feel a sense of comfort and ease in that. And here we see that, again, these two planets are hovering around 3 degrees. This is a very tight conversation. They're going to become exact twice in this month, once at 21 degrees and then once at 22 degrees. Again, this is there in your 10th house of career. This is important because there's a real opportunity to expand business through technology, through science, through innovation, through the internet, new platforms, exposing on some level your deepest heart's desires through the internet. TikTok, has so many different ways of expressing. People do dances, people sing, people do comedy. So there are platforms on the internet that could support whatever your creative expression is. And that even comes to financial things, because we could see something very unexpected in the financial world happen on the world stage during this time. We are going to have our second eclipse, a solar new moon eclipse on the 8th. This is going to happen at 11:20 a.m. Pacific time. This is extremely significant, as we just had a full moon lunar eclipse in Libra on March 25th. So now we're planting the seeds. This is the darkest phase of the moon. An eclipse is a fated event. And how I interpret a fated event is it is an event that gives me an opportunity to make a new choice, a choice that's more aligned to a deeper part of my soul than maybe how my personality would perceive others will respond. Because we see not only are the sun and the moon coming together in the darkest phase of night to create something new, it's at the Libra degree. Chiron is right there in the mix. There's an opportunity to rewrite your wound, to rewrite the story that has anchored you into something that has tethered you small versus expansive. And Chiron, when the wound is reconciled, it becomes a wonderful gift and it offers reward. And I think this is really powerful because, here we are, we're seeing Jupiter at the 19th degree as well. So while they are not actually in, this group of planets here is not actually having a open conversation, there is almost a tenseness as Leo is starting to expand how they believe in themselves, what they think they're capable of, and really starting to birth that into the physical experience. We see this South Node at the same time of the eclipse making a quincunx to Mars and Saturn. So somewhere your history is going to come up and you're going to, review on some level how people have responded historically to your shifting and changing. Pisces is your 8th house of other people's money. The other thing you may not be able to see during the eclipse is that there is a viable, as you express yourself in an authentic, raw, real, not necessarily trying to figure out what the audience will like, but present your authentic self, the audience will then respond. And you might not be able to see that at this time. There's a good possibility that Saturn's going to require tenacity with your creative expression. Mars is going to require bravery with your creative expression. And all of it is going to rub up against an old habit of feeling maybe that you have to acquiesce to a bigger picture. Libra is your 3rd house. Libra is being your 3rd house is naturally excuse me. The 3rd house is Gemini and naturally ruled by Mercury. So as we see that now your 3rd house is Libra, there's going to be an opportunity to review how you have historically been in your work relationships, in your everyday life, what the obligations and duties may be, and in many ways being tasked to go through what could potentially feel uncomfortable initially as you birth this part of yourself, but then it becomes so much more powerful for your ability to then invite others to join you, birth a broader picture that is inclusive to others. So I'm kind of trying to emphasize that if people don't get what you're putting out right now, maybe don't tell them about it right away and kind of keep it to yourself and allow it to get a little momentum. We see a strong sextile from Pluto to Venus and the midheaven here. So, and even Neptune. So this is a real actually, let me take the midheaven out of it because this is actually your 8th and 9th house. So here we're looking at, the transformation through your creativity. Both these planets are extremely creative, extremely whimsical, extremely seeing in many ways what the ideal can be, where the maximum comfort and security and enjoyment can come from. All right, let's go over to our first conjunction, where we're going to see Jupiter and Uranus meet at 21 degrees. This is on the 18th of April. I think this is a very powerful energy because it's in the house of money. Taurus rules money. And on a global level, I think we may see something in the news that shifts money. We may see something about electronic money, futuristic money, and also we could see the masses wanting to liberate themselves from any old ideologies that did not serve the greater collective. Anything where there's an imbalance of power can be sort of illuminated at this time through this particular conjunction. Again, Taurus is your 10th house of career, of public status, We see the sun is at 29 degrees of Aries. I didn't mention this earlier. I should have. The sun is exalted in Aries, so it's in its highest vibration other than its rulership. And the sun is your ruling planet. So while it's been traversing over these points here in your chart in the ninth house, it's giving you an opportunity to truly, reframe how you see yourself and how you see your duties, responsibilities, obligations. And if they are coming from a place of too much arduous energy, meaning you're pushing a rock uphill, then being able to self-care is going to be really important. And that self-care comes in the form of entertainment, enjoyment. Leo also rules gambling, card games, fun like that. Let's go now to the 19th, when the sun is moving into Taurus. Now, this is an interesting energy because here the sun is going to illuminate things. It's going to expand this sort of feeling of how do I use my skills? How do I use my voice? How do I reframe my history to be a platform for expansion versus tethering me to an old story? We see right now the North Node, Mercury and Venus and Chiron just all literally stacked up on each other, and thoughts about my self-worth and my skills, being ravenous to express a new version of myself, to stretch myself in many ways. And then being aware that I have a wound, and am I going to focus on that wound, or am I going to allow myself to move forward? This 21st degree is the Sagittarian degree, which Jupiter naturally has dominion over. So there's an opportunity to have an epiphany about your beliefs and move into a foreign belief system. And I don't mean that in a structural way. I mean that within an interior emotional way. We have, again, we're still feeling this, the energies, it's fading, but we still feel the energies of the quincunx between Mars and the South Node, and then the actual exact quincunx here of my history, where I feel repressed or potentially not seen, and I'm supposed to stay that way. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that's an old story that is putting the wallet and financial security before creative endeavors. And through creative endeavors, even if the creative endeavors are about money, will create more bounty and more money. All right, now we go to a full moon on the 23rd in Scorpio. That will be happening at 4:48 p.m. Pacific time. And this is an illumination of a psychological underbelly, something where you could potentially, Leo, really sort of have this foggy feeling about what is important to you, or a foggy feeling of how I want to phrase this is it's almost as if fate is calling to you. Fate is saying it's time to stretch. It's time to move yourself forward. It's time to be braver in your own life about your self-expression. And this full moon in the sign of deep psychology, Scorpio is intense and brooding. That's the two of the first things anybody ever says. It rules other people's money. It rules death and taxes and sex, and it rules the occult. So it rules, religious Wiccan things outside of what we would consider traditional religion. So if any of those dynamics have kept you tethered to a small story of yourself, you could find an epiphany happening that really, we see this, the full moon is making a T-square to Pluto here. And Pluto is in Aquarius, and Aquarius is your 7th house of partnership. So you could have a real epiphany about how you've been partnering, not just within marriages, but within the partnership you have with professional people. Your 7th house is a house that not only holds contractual relationships, but it holds where your peace of mind is, where your harmony is created, where we see civil, fair, balanced energy come into play. So this might feel a little tense because you may realize that sometimes your fears have been actually potentially creating more disruption than you were aware of initially. And now the awareness of it allows you to take a braver action. Here we see Mars making a sextile to the grand conjunction, the great conjunction, giving us an opportunity to truly have brave action within our interior emotional body that then can then manifest opportunities in the material world. We see on the 25th, we will have our second conjunction exact between Jupiter and Uranus. Now we see Jupiter has moved past Uranus. They'll start separating, but here we're seeing it at the 22nd degree, which is the degree of, it's a degree, it's a Capricorn degree. It's a master number, 22, coming into cooperation in many ways with how my ideologies, my willingness to innovate, to move forward, to learn that new, internet platform, got to get in there and figure out how that thing works. How do I upload? How do I do this or that? It also can be a little bit of a scary degree because it's considered a challenging degree that can represent a feelings of losing oneself. Often it's referred to as the death, kill or be killed degree. But here, I think this is really building new, innovative, historic viewpoints, like looking at a situation and realizing, okay, that was then, this is how it all worked out. Sure, I didn't like it. Sure, it didn't, make me feel warm and fuzzy, but now I can take that and I can reframe it and give it a 2.0 version that empowers me and takes me much more succinctly where I want to go. We also see Mercury is now moved direct on the exact day of what this is the day most people are referring to. Again, we have two conjunctions exact, but the energies, we're going to feel it from March all the way through till May. And here we're going to be ravenous for new thoughts, ravenous for a new experience in my everyday life. This Mercury up against this point, the North Node, we're stretching ourselves to feel a sense of pioneering self. It's almost like, it's like in many ways you can think of Aries as like a teenage boy who's learning how to play football and stretching his skills and becoming more and more powerful within his body and how, or her body, I shouldn't just say him, but being aware of the physical apparatus and honing it is one way I might put that. This could very much come up at that time. And then we go to the 28th, where we will see Mars in an exact conjunction with Neptune. I think that this could be construed as a difficult aspect because people think of Mars as fire and they think of Neptune as erosive. But here, I believe we've made a spiritual warrior. I believe that the 28th degree, which is the Cancerian degree, it's also a 28 that reduces down to a 10, which makes me aware of my thought process. And are my thoughts focused on what I want to experience, or are they focused on the challenges I have experienced? Because we could conceive that Saturn here is bringing old stories back that could haunt you in some ways, tether you. But at the same time, this aspect is really calling forth a brave perception, seeing a spiritual dynamic in a disruption that empowers you versus disempowers you. And we also see that, as Mercury is moving forward, after all the review that Mercury has done, it will now go over Chiron again. And I believe start to think of how can I view my wound as a gift? How can I use that to transform myself? Oftentimes, when we look at people who endeavor philanthropic things, which Jupiter can represent, it's comes from something tragic that could have potentially happened that compelled them that way. So here, whatever the dark spot in your life may be, or the dark spots here, there's an opportunity to truly let the dark spot make the color pop. Because here, the 28th, we see this conjunction. Then we go into the 29th, where Mars is moved into, and later in the day, we'll move into Aries. And by the time we get to on the 29th, Venus moves into her rulership. And then on the 30th, Mars moves into his rulership. So we're seeing a concentration of planets in the signs of self and the signs of my skills and my money and my self-worth. And all of this is so powerful because as you, Leo, have transformed your belief system, you can start to experience that, expansion in the earth and on the earth plane. Here, the reward of building. And I want to kind of offer it this way to round out the video. Sometimes these things happen in the most odd ways. There was a gal who on TikTok was crocheting beanies, and I don't know how long she'd been crocheting beanies, but when Taylor and Travis got together, apparently she got inspired and decided to make Taylor a hat and somehow got the hat to her. Taylor wore the hat to a football game, and that girl who made it, her TikTok blew up, her shop blew up, and she found herself making a lot more money overnight, almost going from rags to riches. And that's what this conjunction has to offer. But part of it is being aware as it's growing in its connection, and then taking advantage of it both emotionally and allowing the emotional body to inspire the action moving forward. Okay, Leo, that's it for April 2024. It's a really wild, pivotal, fun, exciting time to be alive and an exciting time to experience these transits. Just as a side note, I did a separate video on the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And from my research, these two planets have only met 3 times since the year 1181. And in the sign of Taurus. They've met in other signs, but in the sign of Taurus. So this is a real opportunity to experience a 2.0 version of your life. All right, everybody, please like, please subscribe, please share, and I will see you next month in the merry, merry month of May. Have a great, great April.